Is going on, gentlemen? Welcome to another episode here at the Masculine Health Solutions podcast. And today I had the privilege of interviewing Matt Sinkovitz. A little bit of a background on Matt. He's been a practitioner and teacher of personal and spiritual development for over a decade. The guy is an avid student of mindfulness and meditation, graduated from Blue Mountain School of Mindfulness Arts and Seminary program in 2018, and the man is a master's in the Buddhist Ministry and was ordained in Osho in May 2019. Now, what makes him so special is that he obviously, got the spiritual side down, but in our discussion, he told me about how he got rid of his addiction to porn, but he realized that there had to be a purpose to what he does and to his existence, right? So he's like, you know what? I'm going to develop something that's going to be bigger than just letting go of that addiction. And that's where he developed Porn to Purpose. Matt currently runs the 90-day liberation boot camp, as well as the 7-day porn abstinence challenge, along with other things where Matt is passionate about the community's commitment to support committed fathers and husbands in ending their toxic relationship to porn so they can reignite the passion in their relationships and be better role models to their children. And one of the biggest things that stuck out about our conversation, like he told me, he's like, hey, you know what? I can't be telling people where to go on their spiritual journey if I still have this thing holding me back. And that stuck out to me, man, where I'm like, it's true, you can't be fully developed as a dude. And that's one of the things here at Masculine Health Solutions where I really want to work on us, really developing ourselves to be the best version of ourselves and to really just up the ante on who we are as men. So guys, without any further ado, you're going to enjoy this one. All right, let's dive in. Welcome to another episode here at the Masculine Health Solutions podcast. Today I got Matt Sinkovitz. He's going to talk to us a little bit about porn, a little bit of how it's affecting males in society, and more on his background too, and the spiritual side of things that I think a lot of us need to delve in a little bit deeper these days. Matt, how are you, man?
CJ, I'm good, brother. It's really good to be here. Thanks so much for having me today.
So tell us a little bit more of your background, what got you started on your journey? Because, from what I've read, it's pretty extensive and it's pretty deep. So where do you want to start off,
yeah, man? Yeah, thanks. So, man, where is a good place to start? Well, I guess I'll just make an introduction just by saying that, my primary focus at this time is supporting men in overcoming pornography addiction in their lives. And I've been focused in this area since about 2019 or so.
Yeah.
And, this has come up for me as a result of my own 20 plus year journey with pornography. Something I'm in my 30s now, something I adopted in my early teens, like a lot of boys do, but something that kind of stuck with me for a lot of years and continued to adversely affect my own life in many ways, And it was something as I moved into greater levels of purpose and kind of like what I was finding to be my greater calling for my life, I was finding that porn was really inhibiting me stepping into that. It was acting as a ceiling of sorts in my growth and in the work that I felt called to do. So ultimately went out there and ended up getting a coach like I had been doing for many years in many other areas of my life and getting into a community, getting to accountability, getting the path, making the investment and getting it resolved in my own life. And I've also been heavily involved in personal spiritual development for many years. As you mentioned, I'm a ordained Buddhist minister and a mindfulness counselor as well. We can talk about that journey if you want as well. But it all kind of came together for me. And, I was really feeling called to step more fully into my work and to being of service to others. And my personal development, my spiritual development journey, along with my journey in pornography and sex kind of all came together. Recognizing so many men are dealing with this, and it's a very lonely journey, something that really imprisons a lot of men. So I stepped in and shared my own journey and what I did to find resolution in my own life, and here we are today, man.
I love that. And honestly, you'd be surprised at how many people reach out to me and talk to me about, hey, man, like porn's kind of getting in the way of things. How'd you find that, like, spiritually? Because I think it's something that not a lot of people talk about, but like spiritually, how did it make you feel knowing that, hey, man, like I can't really shrug this one off. Like, how'd you
Hmm.
go about dealing with that?
Yeah, man. So I've been on this, I would say since about age 25. I'm 38 years old now. Around age 35, I kind of had like a spiritual awakening in my life of sorts, I would say. I was in a really actually dark, deep, depressed space in my life, and really kind of suicidal
Yeah.
and obsessive thinking, and just was not happy with myself, was not happy with my life. And I kind of had this moment where I remember I was working in the hotel industry. I was sitting at my desk, and I was just in this really deep, heavy place. And I kind of had this moment where I kind of woke up and realized that I'm like, hey, if I can see the thoughts that I'm having, if I can observe them, then maybe they're not entirely who I am. Maybe there's like a part of me that can observe my thoughts and see and experience the thoughts. And there's also this parts of me that's really like the thinker. So I kind of had this moment and this moment of insight, and that led me into studies around mindfulness and
Mm,
meditation and ultimately Buddhism. So I became a heavy mindfulness practitioner, a heavy meditation practitioner, began sitting with a local Sangha, a Buddhist
okay.
community, and for regular meditation, and then ultimately ended up going on to study with my teacher. Went to seminary and became ordained as a minister and a mindfulness counselor. And yeah, man, I think your question was how did it impact me spiritually, and kind of how did I begin to recognize that? So also over the past decade or plus, I've been really investing in myself, working with coaches and mentors, doing my own work, both personally and spiritually. And I think as I evolved, as I grew kind of in consciousness, as I grew in awareness, I became increasingly aware that porn just wasn't healthy for me.
Yeah.
I do my best not to make a judgment across the board for everybody that uses porn. Some people it's not a problem with. Some people they use it casually. Some people use it in their relationships. Some people they're just not at a point where they recognize it to be an issue for them. So if that's them, if that's you, that's the case. But for me, I began to recognize more and more it wasn't alignment with myself. It wasn't in alignment with who I was called to be. I began recognizing it was creating suffering in my life. It was creating negative adverse feelings, emotional experiences, mental experiences. It was creating sexual awkwardness, social awkwardness. It was affecting my relationships. And it was just one of those things I just kind of knew it wasn't cool for me. And I
Yeah.
was also around that time beginning to like step more. I was in seminary when I was kind of really going through this, and I really made this decision in my life. And I was like, starting to do more work. I grew up in a Christian household. My parents did prison ministry, so some of my earliest memories were in the prisons with my parents visiting inmates, and kind of full circle um, as I began exploring interfaith ministry through my chaplaincy work. I went back into the prison as a Buddhist minister
What?
and began leading meditation, and I was doing spiritual guidance for people in there. And that was really when I think when I began to step more into my spiritual calling and being of service to others. It didn't feel right to me to have pornography still unresolved in my life and then go and sit in front of those people just kind of knowing that was going on for me. And porn had a real way of kind of sabotaging me. I would make momentum in my life, I would go back to porn, and it would just kill my momentum.
Yeah.
So for all these reasons, it was creating a kink in the hose, man. And I really looked at it like a spiritual ceiling it was creating for me. So I just recognized like at some point I had to get it resolved. And I was actually on a podcast interview earlier this week, and I was kind of having a conversation with the brother. And for me, there was this point in my journey when I kind of like recognized, I was like, all right, this is something I recognize that I've been trying to resolve for many years unsuccessfully. I've continued to return to it. And also, porn has this nature of kind of becoming increasingly extreme in genre. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
you need more and more, harder and harder stuff, to hit those arousal mechanisms. And I'm like, man, if I like, where does my life go like in 20 years? You know what I mean? If I can't
Yeah.
kick this thing and it continues to evolve. So I was just like, I got to suck it up and do the work, man, and dig in on this. And that's what I decided to do. So kind of a long answer to your question there.
No, but that's exactly what I wanted, man. Because I
Yeah.
mean, man, you are not exclusive in this because I think it's just getting worse and worse. Like even for myself, I remember I was telling my wife about this, and I like when I was a kid, like my neighborhood or my complex, right, was right next to a quarry, and we broke into like the quarry, right, and we kind of got in there, And we were like, I don't know what we were looking for, man, like gold or some shit. But we ended up finding like a Hustler magazine. And then we hid it like in the wall there. And then we'd always go there. And you know, it's kind of like it triggered, unfortunately, kind of that addiction at a very young age. And
Yeah,
I remember
brother.
even explaining it to my wife, like back in the day, you know, you'd be so addicted that you'd be like, oh, I'm downloading off Kazaa. And, you know, every pixel would just kind of show up and you're like, oh, finally the nipple. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like it was, but that being said, it's kind of like it steered me in the wrong direction. It's not something that
Yeah,
obviously
brother.
you want to keep going on, right? Because it was
Right, right.
addictive in nature. And even at that time, even as young as I was, you know, it was, dude, it made an impact on my life, right?
For sure, brother. For sure. Yeah. And I look at the reasons, like people often ask me, how was it something that kind of stuck with you? Because it doesn't stick with everybody. For some
Yeah.
people, it's drugs and alcohol. For some people, it's food. You know what I mean? For me, it was sex. And yeah, man, I think it was like a way that I was a kind of a shy kid. It was a way that I kind of like would maybe make that connection and kind of relate to women. I think it was a way that I was exploring my sexuality. It was kind of like it was a way of comfort for me. You know what I mean? That I would find. It was always like that safety blanket I could go to as a kid. And of course, it was really exciting too, man. And there's that
Yeah.
whole neuroplasticity thing we're doing. We're kind of hardwiring that into the brain. And again, some people go to drugs or alcohol. Some people go to food. For me, it was sex and porn, man. So yeah, brother.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I've tried, man, I tried ecstasy, cocaine, like a bunch of dumb things when I was a kid. Like I look at it now, I'm like, oh dear Lord, why would I do that? Right. But it's honestly, I've never found any of those to be half as addicting as, you know, what I can just type in on the computer. Like nothing.
Yeah, it's a good drug, man.
Yeah. So like what do you think would be the best approach? Because I got two boys, and now like what's going
Yeah.
through my head is they got technology, you know, everywhere. What do you think is the best
hmm
approach for us to just kind of make sure we can nip that in the bud or even stop it from happening with the generations coming up?
Yeah. You mean like for kids, brother?
Yeah, like because my
For
kids are
kids.
what, like 10 and 6, and he's starting to get into girls and
Yeah.
all that, you know.
Yeah. Hey, brother, that's a real thing, man. You know what? I've been having this conversation more and more. I just started a podcast, and a
Where
couple
can we
weeks
find
back, I
you?
had oh yeah, Porn to Purpose. Just find the Porn to Purpose podcast. Right now, it's on Spotify. I'll be getting in other places, and
Awesome.
maybe at the end, I'll share where else you can
Oh,
connect.
for
But
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
Porn to Purpose podcast. And I had a brother on there a couple weeks ago, and he's the leader of a large men's community that focuses on stuff around dads.
Okay.
And we focus a lot with fathers as well.
Yeah.
And we got into the conversation. I had him on. He's a gentleman who had pornography was a big part of his life as a kid. And so of course we got into the conversation. All right, now how do we mentor and shepherd young boys today? Because hey man, these things are trouble, these phones, bro.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
like it's a click away at all times. And even if you put all the safeguards in place, Instagram, Facebook, like all these things, it's constantly triggers out there. So what do you do? What do you do? And again, this stuff is designed, it's built. I mean, social media itself can be a trigger.
Yeah.
Scrolling can be a trigger, And so what do we do? Because it's all designed to hook us. And so what do we do with kids? I think one thing we can really do is normalize the conversation around sex,
Yeah.
and not make it like a weird conversation in the household, not make it this taboo conversation. I think the most important thing any father can do for their children in this is have it resolved in their own lives,
No, number one.
right? Number
Yeah.
one, man, because if it's not resolved for you, how can you lead in integrity your family or your boys, or how can you speak to from a place of real wisdom? So I
Mm,
think that's the number one thing is have it resolved. Again, I think at least be doing the work around it. Number two, I think, is to kind of try and normalize the conversation around sex, because sex for a lot of us is one of these things. Oftentimes it's not spoken about in the home, or maybe our home is really sexualized, and
yeah.
so whatever. So a lot of us have stuff going on with sex, man. That's a very common human experience, I think. So helping them cultivate a healthy relationship with their own sexuality and what sex is, being able to creating this environment where they can come and talk to you about girls or whatever's going on for them sexually. They can come to talk to you about pornography. And also, I think I think another big one, CJ, is really putting good safeguards in
Yeah.
place. I mean, I know maybe some parents don't want to or don't want to have to deal with trying to regulate or monitor what's going on with the phones. this brother I had on our podcast, his name's Larry Hagner, and the community is called the Dad Edge community. And he recommended this software. It's called Bark, B-A-R-K, I guess.
Okay.
And yep. And it monitors all the stuff going on in your kids' cell phone. So it's text messages, web searches, apps, whatever. And it alerts parents to keyword searches. So it helps you really put safeguards in place. I think just having general safeguards around technology is also a really big piece of the puzzle. And what Larry also recommended, which I really like, was talk to your kids about the dangers of it, because kids can't always see the dangers of it, man. You know, we're seeing more and more younger and younger kids running into issues like ED at younger and younger ages, man. Erectile dysfunction, for those of you listening that might not know what that is. So, you know, like young kids that can't get an erection or can't maintain an erection, or this pornography is really educating them on what sex is, and it's not a realistic picture. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for him, he's like, hey, look, I know you're 14 years old, and because he had a couple instances where this stuff came up for his kid, and he had a heart to heart with him. He's like, look, first of all, you're not weird for it. It's a normal part of being a boy. It's a normal curiosity. I was there too. But let me tell you, first of all, you know, what the last thing you want is whenever you are ready to be intimate with a woman and you're 18 or 19 or 20 or whatever that age is for you, and you're there and you're desiring to connect with her and you can't get or maintain an erection. Like, there's nothing more devastating than that for the brothers out there who have maybe experienced that. It's a disheartening experience, you know? So
yeah,
like really helping them get like, all right, maybe they can't understand or grasp the moral side of the conversation, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever, but they can get that could be a real consequence down the road, you know? Or, hey, imagine if that was your daughter one day, maybe, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever, like trying to humanize the conversation a little bit. So I don't know, it's tricky, man, but I think real involvement at the end of the day with the parents and the kids is really crucial, man, you know?
Yeah. Because I mean, that's the one thing that I never thought of as a father. You know, it's like I didn't think would be where we're at with technology now. And it kind of scares me because I'm just like, whoa, dude, like this guy's got the world at a cell phone, right?
Yeah,
and you know, tablets, whatever. I mean, to me, I've always been big on communication. So, you know, I got that as a plus, but now it's just like making sure that I can kind of mold his mind to be like, hey man, let's focus on good things, focus on good relationships, none of this stuff, right? Because it seems like it's everywhere, man. Like on Instagram, TikTok, like it doesn't even matter.
You name it, bro. You name it. As a man today, you know, in our community, we teach this idea. We call it, you know, like the noble lens. We call it. We have a couple exercises we take our guys through, but one of them is just about maintaining a high level of integrity. We teach our guys something called the 2x2 rule, which says don't look twice, don't look for more than 2 seconds. We've got to learn to begin to train our attention. That goes with a girl you see walking down the street, but that also goes with stuff that you find triggering on your phone. Like, don't allow your mind to start going there. We've got to put kind of these, it's almost like a horse with blinders on. We got to learn to like train our attention and not go there, because you click on that picture and you click on the next picture, then the next picture, and your integrity begins to erode, man. And after a while you say, well, I've already done it. You know, I've already gone down the rabbit hole. So why not just walk through that final door? Like that's how those relapses occur, man. You know?
So that's interesting because you mentioned neuroplasticity, and it's kind of like, I know that we kind of get conditioned to things in a certain way, right? It's kind of like when I go to the gym, I just know, okay, cool, pack my stuff up, I go, I almost don't even think. I get there, I do my thing, I'm gone, right? And sometimes I look back and be like, oh, that was a blur. You know, I didn't even notice that, you know, I've already done it all. It's just kind of like, you know, same deal as when you're driving to work. And I find that that's kind of the same behavior that for a lot of guys, it's almost like, you know, it just goes on his computer, starts off with the one picture, boom, boom, boom. But what's interesting to me is that you have a strategy to approach this. What other strategies do you employ, and how does your coaching kind of like, what are the origins of it, or how do you begin the whole process of fixing these issues?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, brother. You know, we have a whole process. We teach our guys a philosophy. It's called the Freedom Framework. And it's a philosophy that we teach them about 10 different elements for like, what is the key to long-term freedom from pornography? You know, that was always my question. It's like, you can go a couple days, a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months, but you can continue to return back to that day zero mark, as we call it. And that's a devastating place to be, you know? So what's the key? And what I found in my journey, man, it's really, the answer is really, this might not be that sexy of an answer. It is to me, but the key is really, it's like about lifestyle. It's about like a real true evolution, of mind, body, and spirit. It's about this process of conscious evolution. It's about, there's like this little boy inside of all of us. And oftentimes it's that little boy that picked up that Hustler magazine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At age 13, he's still in there and he's still very active. So we have to learn, as now the adult in the driver's seat, to help that little boy grow up, and change his ways and change his behaviors. But we do a couple things, man. Like the freedom framework in a very simple format would be, we first help our brothers get into accountability. And that is done through, a really diverse accountability kind of system that we have in place. It's not just accountability software. It's not just an accountability partner. It's all those things. It's like about 5 layers of accountability. And we do that also with community. Having them hook up to a community of other men that are on this journey is a really big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But the key with those 2 pieces is to help them get into abstinence. If we can help them get into abstinence a couple days and a couple weeks and a couple months, there's this natural healing and natural correction that begins to occur. It's like whatever's going on for you, there is like a natural healing. It's like those no-fap communities out there where they do the reboots and stuff, man. There's real power in that. There's a great book called Your Brain on Porn.
Yeah.
And that's all about the reboot thing, and talks all about the correlation of the brain. So there's a healing and there's a correction that occurs once we're in abstinence. And once we've got that abstinence established, or we start, then we can begin going in and doing the work. It's much like an alcoholic has to get sober for him to begin doing the work around his relationship with alcohol. So we help the addict get sober, basically.
Yeah.
We help the brother get sober. Once we do that, there's a handful of practices. We are a mindfulness-based community. We teach meditation, and another way which we teach mindfulness is through journaling. And we help brothers go in and get to the root of their relationship with pornography. So like oftentimes we've adopted this relationship with porn kind of unconsciously, and we've kept it as a part of our life, right? And we've used porn to meet certain needs, right? Oftentimes we go to porn, it's not just because of a sexual need, sometimes it is, but oftentimes, just like some people use cigarettes, food, drugs, or alcohol, we're going to porn because we're lonely, angry, tired, disconnected, sad, anxious, bored, you name it. You know what I'm saying? So really helping a brother, as you mentioned, oftentimes we just go to the gym or we just go to the porn, and after we're kind of unconscious the whole time. It's like what underlying need is actually driving this behavior? And if we can learn to slow down and see the need that's actually coming up, right, then we can learn to also meet those needs in a healthier way.
Yeah.
Another piece of the puzzle around awareness is learning to be with our emotions. A lot of times we go to porn because we can't deal with what's going on inside of us, or we don't want to deal with what's going on inside of us. It speaks to that conversation around needs. So through mindfulness, again, helping our brothers like learn to be with the emotions that are going on inside of us. A lot of us are emotionally immature. We run away from emotions,
Yeah.
So learning to be with what's going on inside of us, and that's emotional maturity. Getting to the root of our relationship with porn, and then the final piece of the puzzle, in simplicity, is then the skills and the tools. What are the day-to-day tactics? How do I overcome the urge to use porn? How do I actually deal with these impulses? How do I actually now redirect the energy in a healthy way? And a big piece of that is also establishing the healthy habits. It's like, if I'm going to say no to porn, what am I going to say yes to? What are the healthy habits I can, like, where can I redirect this energy in a healthy way? In order to break a habit, we must make a habit.
Yeah.
So we help our brothers get into healthy habits and routines, and really get the tools and the skills to help them make the shifts and make different choices, and redirect that energy in ways that actually lift them up versus tear them down.
I love that, man. What are some things, like for me, I've always been in the gym, right? But even when I was struggling with porn, it was almost like I could, handle both. But now it's almost like, now I just focus more on like nutrition and just kind of go harder in that to almost keep my mind occupied, right? But what is it that you tell guys? Maybe like take a spin class, martial arts or something like, what are things that you would recommend for a guy to just kind of get his mind off that and focus on, good things?
Yeah, it's like do something else, man. And that's a big part of our process. So do you mind if I talk about kind of our program, kind of how we do it a little bit?
Man, for sure.
Cool. So the name of our program, the name of our community is called Porn to Purpose, right?
Yeah.
So much of our thing is about, a lot of times we go to porn because we don't have purpose. We don't have a vision. We don't have a why. We don't know what else to do. A lot of times I find guys come into our community, either they don't have a vision for their life. They never took the time to do that. They don't know what else they want. Or they have a vision for it, but they don't believe it's possible. So much of our work is really about, we kind of have this whole conversation around the why.
Yeah.
Right? The why, like it's got to be the reason, it's got to be the motivator. Why are you showing up to this work? The first part of the why is what you're no longer willing to tolerate in your life. What are you moving away from? AKA, how is porn affecting your relationships, your health, your energy, your spiritual walk, all these different things, your productivity, your money, all these things, right? So that's the first half. But then the second half is, all right, now what do you want instead? And what does that vision for your life look like? So for one guy, it might be, the gym, it might be health. For another guy, it might be that beautiful, healthy marriage and relationship and sex and intimacy. Maybe it's for some guys, it's like, man, I know I'm called to be more. I know I'm called to serve others and to lead men, but I know this is getting in the way. So yeah, it's like do something else. But if we can help them really connect with something else that's meaningful, man, it makes a big difference, man. So yeah, redirect that energy, but it really helps to have a vision around where do I actually want to direct that energy and what would really fill up my cup,
Yeah. It's
bro.
kind of, I don't know how you feel about like that belief of harnessing sexual energy and sex transmutation. I remember the first time I ever heard about it, it was in Think and Grow Rich. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know what this book is about, man. Like, like this one dude was telling me like, hey, we're going to sell electronics. I'm like, you got me here reading about sex transmutation, brother. I don't know what you're talking about, man. Like, but I remember that stuck out to me, and I started reading more about it and how, like, that energy can be manifested into bigger and better things. Would you say that's one of the things that you try to teach your students? Kind of like, hey, take that energy and put into something else.
Yeah, 100%, man. That's that whole second piece, and that's where the porn to purpose piece is. It's like, yeah, let's take that energy, let's harness that sex energy, which is literally, brothers, energy that we use to create life.
Yes.
It is our life force energy, man. So what if we can use that energy to create something else, something beautiful, something that aligns with what's in our heart, So yeah, it's like sex transmutation, semen retention, tantra, all these old ancient practices really of how do we harness that energy and direct it in really powerful ways? It's really, really beautiful, man.
Can you touch more on Tantra? I don't really know too much about it.
I don't know too much about it either. I just know I know it's a form of Buddhism. It's also, I believe found in Hinduism. And it's a way to, I think, work with and redirect that energy from what I understand, brother.
Gotcha. And semen retention, how have you seen the guys change when you work with them? Like, what are some noticeable things where you're just like, bro, he's got like, he's got a shine to him or something, like, what is it you see when they go through your program and, the wheels start turning and everything just starts flowing?
Yep. That's exactly right. Like porn is one of these things that really puts a kink in the hose. It's like a poison or a toxin. I say it's like polluting the system. And so what we do is we go in and say like the mind or the body or the spirit is like a garden, right?
Yeah.
And there are certain things that act as weeds in that garden, and porn is one of them. So we go in and we just weed the garden and we get the crap out of there. And then it's like the natural, beautiful, like essence, the life force energy that wants to flow through us. When we stop blocking it up, it can flow, Yeah. So one of the common things I hear when guys show up, the guys that are really committed to the work, some aren't as clear on this, but whenever I hear a guy show up and he's talking like this, and I know we got someone that's going to do well, but oftentimes it's a man, it's a husband, it's a father who says, man, he's like, I want to be the me that I know I'm supposed to be. I know this isn't it. And I'm tired of being a slave to this. Some of those guys come into our program 20, 30 years, addicted to pornography, and they just like, they're like, when I was a young kid, they'll say, there was a vision, for me, like, I want to get back to that vision. I want to get back to that version of myself that I'm called to be. I want to get back to the me I'm supposed to be. So what's really beautiful is when we go in and we weed that garden, man, it's like this natural essence begins to flow. And it's the things that if you're a regular porn user, you might never know about, you might never see until you give it a try,
Yeah.
It's like, you don't realize how much not drinking enough water makes you feel crappy until you start drinking more water. Be like, oh, I didn't realize I was dehydrated before. If you ever smoke cigarettes, you don't realize how much a pack a day actually makes you feel like shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, for sure.
Until you stop smoking. So that's the same thing with porn. You don't realize the adverse effects of it until you give it a break. But to answer your question, yeah, man, that life force energy begins to flow. And what I begin to see is just like there's a natural aliveness, there's a natural brightness, there's a natural inspiration that begins to flow. There's this greater sense of integrity. A man begins to cultivate a healthier relationship with the guy looking back in the mirror. Like that's the biggest thing, is like they begin to say, all right, I like myself now more, and I'm a man that actually honors my commitment. It's like the biggest thing is you begin to respect that man looking back at you in the mirror. And ultimately you begin to love that man and like that man and appreciate that man. And it's like you begin to look at yourself as a man of integrity. That's the best thing. Because when we're out of integrity, man, it's like a slow death, It's like when we continue to act in a way we know is out of alignment, it's like creates a suffering, man. It's a slow death. So that's one thing, is like this natural vibrance begins to occur. We see relationships restored, man. Very common, like that closeness, that intimacy within the relationship. And that might not just mean sex. It might mean just a closeness. There's like that trust, that it's like the real man can begin to come through. Energy, focus, productivity. Guys that come to our program with the ED issues, many of them get that resolved just through the abstinence. There's that reset that occurs, man. Making more money in business because they're productive and they're focused at work and they're not blowing their energy. One of our most senior members, he came in with the same story. He's almost at his 1 year porn free. He'll hit it in the next month or two.
Nice.
And he came in, and that was his story, man. He's like, I want to be 50-year-old man. He's like, I want to be the me that I know I'm supposed to be. And we began doing the work, and we began digging into the conversation around purpose. And as we kind of touched on here today, a lot of guys, they've been directing this energy at the screen, at porn, at masturbation, right? At porn, and they're like, so many guys come in and be like, man, I want to be like focusing my energy on this side business I want to be starting. I want to like get out of this 9 to 5 and I want to start my biz, man. And I want to be directing my energy there, but I keep screwing myself up, So this brother, he came in, and his vision was always to be a writer. You know what I mean? So he came in, he's almost a year porn free. He just finished his first book, which he's going to be publishing on Amazon. And he's starting a second book. And this is all the purpose work we could do. So we dig in, and we don't just help you get rid of the porn, but we now help you and hold you accountable to moving into greater levels of purpose. And like, what am I here to do? What really lights me up, man? So all those things, brother.
Well, that just gave me chills, man.
Yeah.
But that's awesome to hear, because it's kind of like a lot of people think like, you know what, if I just get rid of this thing, but then they don't replace it with anything else, or they just don't know where to direct it. And that's what I love about what you're telling me, is that you're like, no, dude, now that you got this figured out, you can move on to bigger things. It's kind of, for me, I always found that masculinity is about, providing, because you got to provide for your family, your society, protecting, because you got to protect your own, protect the people that obviously need protection. And the other one is just progress, man. Like, how are you progressing in your day-to-day life? Or how are you progressing in business? How are you progressing in anything, right? And I kind of feel like it's almost like, I feel like porn just gets a lot of men just stuck in the mud, and they just spin their wheels. And it's almost like, you're not going anywhere. Like, like.
Exactly, bro. That was me, man. I was recognizing I could not get traction, man, because I continued to sabotage myself. And if it wasn't because, going back to porn would just kind of screw up my energy and my self-esteem and my self-confidence for a couple of days, it would affect my sense of like, man, am I even worthy to be doing something else? Like it affects us on a very, our level, our whole relationship with ourselves, man. It's very subtle. You don't always see it, but man, it's there for sure.
Do you feel like it's kind of like a form of disrespect to your body?
I would say it is. I think it's like an unhealthy relationship with our body. We have this manifesto we created, and one of the principles of the manifesto is, I practice non-harm, and also I practice non-harm to myself, and I treat my body as the temple that it is, man. I think it is. I mean, if it's not like a direct, blatant, like conscious disrespect, it is just like the same way eating a bunch of junk food is disrespectful to our body. Gotcha. We're misusing our body. We're using it to get a high. We're using it to get that fix, to get that dopamine hit. We're using it to grab the low-hanging fruit, man. And when we try and hack life, sometimes it can be really unhealthy, man. And I think it is a form of disrespect.
Love that. Yeah, because it's kind of like, you can't really get around those consequences, man. Like, and like I said, like I just, for me recently too, like I was kind of reading into, I'm like, I wonder if there's karmic effects of it. Because another thing that I had just read an article about how a lot of the people that you see on Pornhub or on these different sites, it's kind of like they're actually victims of like trafficking. And I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
hold the phone, man. Like, I'm like, that's nuts. And that's not positive. And the thing is, if you're constantly watching this stuff, like you are basically supporting that inadvertently. Maybe you don't know it, but it's still like you're being, you're actively supporting it in a way because you're spending your time there, you're getting off or whatever, and you're constantly visiting the website, right? You're constantly there.
Yep.
And I'm like, I just don't know. I was thinking about that. I'm like, yo, because I'm basically people are getting off on these other people suffering. And the sex you see in porn isn't really real, right? Like it's degrading to a woman. It looks like they're just beating each other up, and I just kind of found that for myself anyways. And that's kind of why I wanted to ask you if it was disrespectful to yourself, but I find that it's disrespectful to society in a way too, because it's almost like, let's take advantage of these other people that are suffering just for, me to get off and get that dopamine hit, right?
Yeah, brother. And again, so much of this process is not just about, I recognize porn's not good, I quit. It's really so much of this is about this cultivation of consciousness that we kind of started the conversation with. It's like we don't always see that at first. We don't always see that, nor do we care. But as we grow in consciousness, as we grow in awareness, you mentioned earlier about the self-respecting. So much of our work is also about self-love. If we don't love ourselves, of course we don't respect ourselves. So a big piece of our process is also about cultivating a healthier love and respect and appreciation and relationship with ourselves.
Yeah.
We start there, and then we want to we're less inclined to want to take actions that are harmful towards ourselves. But the sex trafficking thing is definitely big, man. We're having a brother inside our community, I think later in February or March. We have regular experts come in, and he works in the sex. He's like in the anti-sex trafficking industry, and he's going to come in, and he's like, I just had a kind of a little intro conversation with him 2 days ago, and he's like, porn and sex trafficking are tied at the hip. He's like, many of those people, whether you know it or not, are somehow coerced into that. And you know what? I also want to say, I recognize that there are some probably conscious, aware ladies who are in the pornography industry, and it's a conscious choice, and they're like, hey, whatever, to me it makes sense, and I'm okay with it. But I think there's a lot, right? Making the money, doing their thing, okay, whatever. But I think that's a smaller portion, bro. And it's like, even if a young girl has not been coerced to be there, I don't think it's not because she loves herself and she feels great about herself and that uplifts her spirit and she's going to be proud of that decision in 10 years. It's probably because she came from a bad home. She probably doesn't feel that good about herself. She's probably down her luck. You know what I mean? She probably needs the money. She might have a drug thing going on. So yeah, it is fake, man. And I think we're fooling ourselves to think it's much more than anything else, man.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's kind of like, it just doesn't look healthy anyways. And it's kind of like, I was joking around with my wife. I'm like, hey, you want me to grab you, choke you, and then come on all over your face? And she's like, no, like not at all.
Exactly.
And it was interesting because I had a conversation with Josh Richey, who is also, an ex-porn addict. And now he's helping people and he's speaking on the subject too. And an interesting story that he told me is that a lot of the girls on campus are saying, hey, we don't want to have sex with these dudes. And he was like, well, why not? He's like, well, they just replicate what they see in porn and they think it's real.
Yes, bro.
And I'm like, what? Like that thought never even crossed through my head, but it's almost like we're grooming or conditioning these younger generations to think, hey, this is the way that it's done. Right. Yeah. And it's almost like in your field, do you ever feel that you have to like recoach certain guys that maybe are younger and be like, hey man, that's not the way it's done, man. Self-love, love the person you're with. This is how you go about it.
Yeah, man. I mean, we see that all the time. And, we talked a little bit earlier about the issue around the kids and the phones and stuff, man. We're hearing that more and more and more. And you can go out there and look at the statistics on it. But yeah, pornography, again, especially because it's so accessible and the genres are getting so much more extreme and extreme. It's like pornography is really becoming a lot of young kids' sex education,
Yeah.
So it's training the guys about what sex is supposed to look like. And it's also training the girls around what their expectations are, from us, and yeah, it's really unhealthy. And what you said there about girls being like, hey, we're not interested because we don't want to be treated like that. 100%.
Yeah.
Most girls, thankfully I'm in a great relationship right now. I was just talking with my girlfriend about this recently. And yeah, man, of course, some girls, of course, sometimes you like to be rough and kinky and all these different things. There's a time for that. But
For
mostly
sure.
girls want to be loved, and it's about softness, and it's about intimacy, and it's about closeness. You know what I mean? It's not about what you see on that screen. That's not most of the time what girls are really after, man. It's like a total inversion of the
Oh
truth,
yeah.
man. You
Well,
know?
yeah, it's kind of like the one thing I'll never see in any porn, and I didn't even know, it's like the female orgasm. I'm like, how come that's never included? Like
Right,
it's always like facial at the end. I'm like, bro, like
right.
not in real life. I mean, if you don't
Hmm.
want your relationship to last very long, go ahead and do that. But
Right.
go ahead.
Interestingly, on that point, like you see it and you think, oh, like that looks sexy, but you're also like really aroused at the time because you're like masturbating too. So you think that's like you might think, or you might be kind of be receiving the information or the message that that's sexy. But like for me, whenever I would like think about actually doing that, I always felt like some of that stuff was like really degrading. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
I don't want to come on a girl's face. Like that feels degrading to me. You know what I'm saying? That feels like humiliating to me. So it might look like one thing on the screen, but again, they're actors in many cases.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, doesn't look like the girl really enjoys it, man. It looks like
No.
it's oftentimes not cool. Maybe some girls like that, but I think generally speaking, that's not it, man. You
No,
know?
not at all. And it's kind of like I mean, I had a conversation with a dude, and his whole thing is obviously, perfecting like orgasm for females, for males, whatever. And his whole thing was like, if you watch any porn, quote unquote, where they're trying to get the chick off, he's like, they have no idea what they're doing. Like they're rubbing the clitoris like it's sandpaper or
I
something.
know.
And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I know.
and then in real life, we're like, yo, brother, take a step back.
Chill, bro. Chill.
Simmer it
Yeah, man.
down, slow and steady wins the race. And
Yes, yes.
one thing I kind of want to ask in regards to that, how do you see an improvement in the sex life specifically of fathers or married men or men who have been in relationships after they let go of that, after watching all the porn that they have?
Hmm. Yeah, man. Okay, and I'll speak to my experience as well,
All
but
right.
but generally speaking, like closer, more intimate, more connected, more present. Again, there's like this trust thing that occurs and arises. Of course, better, more consistent, more predictable, and erections and the ability to maintain that, man. It like really improves what's going on in the bedroom, man, for sure. And again, for me, I was found that porn, especially if I watched porn and then was with my girlfriend that night or the next couple of days, I kind of felt sexually off. I felt like a little bit sexually awkward. It didn't feel quite right to me for some reason. But all that goes away, like just kind of getting comfortable in our own skin. Like that's stuff that you can't help someone who's never experienced it really understand. But like we are in our sexual power. We feel good about ourselves. We feel good in our body. Like we feel in our sexual power. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's this powerful masculine feminine dynamic that we can really step into. And those things that, again, I'll speak to my relationship, but man, like really good, beautiful presence, beautiful connection, beautiful intimacy, great orgasms, longer sex. It's about the subtle stuff, man. It's about the soft stuff too. And oh, like so much of a difference, man. So much of a difference.
Well, it's crazy because you mentioned the physiological effects of how, it's affecting like a lot of the male erections, I guess. But what are
Mhm.
other physiological things that you see from guys letting go of it? Does or not ED, premature ejaculation, is that a big one too? Or
Yeah, that's another big one. That's an interesting one because that's never not one I've dealt with, but it's something a lot of guys have dealt with. And yeah, I think there's like, from what I understand, there's this anxiety that's involved in it. It's like a fear-based response that occurs. So yeah, that's something that also seems to be cured as a result of abstinence as well. So ED and premature ejaculation seem to be kind of in a similar genre, and both seem to be corrected as a result of abstinence.
gotcha. I mean, I just feel like there's a whole host of issues, man, like psychologically speaking, physiologically speaking, spiritually.
Mhm.
I just feel like, it's affecting everything, right?
Yeah, bro. And you know what I'll say? I think also with that premature ejaculation thing, porn miseducates us, man. You know what I mean? Like oftentimes, like when you get it, you watch porn, you forget what it's really about, and it becomes all about the nut. It becomes all about
Yeah.
ejaculating. You know what I'm saying? It's about get in, get out. Even if you watch porn, there's not really much intimacy or kissing. You know, it's just
No,
about the
yeah.
penis and the vagina and then the money shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we kind of have a similar relationship when we're watching porn. It's not about intimacy. It's not about connection. It's about the nut. It's about the money shot. You know what I'm saying? It's very similar. Um, so I think there must be a correlation then whenever we go to have sex, you know what I mean? Like we've kind of trained ourselves to just be about the nut, to just be about to just be about the ejaculation, man, to just be about the orgasm. And what I've also found through porn abstinence is like this ability to really slow down, to take
Hmm.
control over what's going on for us sexually, and really learning to, all right, how do I actually like clamp down on my sex area? How do I actually hold back on an orgasm? How do I
Yes.
slow down so the lady can get off or once or a couple times, you know what I mean, before you
Yeah.
do, and really make it an extended. But that comes with practice, man. That's where like that little boy, he wants to get in and get out and get his nut off
Yep.
and get out. But like again, I think what we can do is we can shepherd that young boy into a man and help him really enjoy much deeper levels of intimacy and connection and just great sex, man.
Kind of that full evolution of man. And that's kind of,
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, that's that real masculine energy that women want, not some little boy
Yes.
who's just coming in, bang, bang. All right. Have a good day.
Yeah, man.
Like,
And I think it makes you, if we could say the sex energy is like this creative, like I think it also just generally makes you more attractive in life. I think it makes you more attractive to women. It helps you get your swagger on. You're full of your power. You're full of your confidence. You're not feeling weird and awkward like you got this weird sexual thing going on. It generally makes you more attractive, I think, to good things in life. And I think women really pick up on that too, because we're all energetic beings, man. So I think women sense that as well, bro.
dude, man, it's funny you mentioned that because I think there's like a certain frequency when you're just kind of vibing, whether
Yes.
it's like in the bedroom and life, you just kind of have this swagger about you where it's just like, yeah, I got it, man. Where I think
Yep.
kind of like the dude that's constantly just busting nuts behind his computer, you can almost tell.
Yeah.
Because I know even for myself, like when I was a kid, well, I guess when I was like 19, 20, whatever. And even then, I was like already, like I guess I was constantly on it, right? And that's when computers really picked up
Yeah.
their game. So, I was
Mm-hmm.
constantly there, constantly just kind of whatever whacking off. And it's almost
Yep.
like I noticed when I go clubbing and I just practice the semen retention thing because my buddy had kind of mentioned it. And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Fine, whatever. I'll go a week without jerking off and go clubbing. And I just found that I was like a magnet, right? The chicks are just like attracted to you. You're more
Yes,
confident.
brother. Yes, brother.
You walk in, you're just like, yeah, all right. It's like it
Yep.
just your demeanor changes. And then when I would test it out and be like, okay, I jerked off 3 times that day, like, yeah, let's go clubbing. It's like, hey, what's up? Just you feel
Yeah,
off.
bro. That's exactly what I've been talking. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That awkwardness. You know what I mean? It's like it's a drain of power, man. It's an energy leak. And look for the guys out there, like this one should hit home, right? They have you ever heard like the idea like they tell a boxer or a fighter not to
Yes.
have sex before a fight?
Yeah.
Same thing, man, because there's an energy to it, man. There's an energy to it. There's a power to it, and we want to retain that. And the more we do when we practice that, man, it's apparent, bro.
100%, man. Like, because I remember hearing that, like, because I watched a couple like no fab videos, right, where the guy would basically talk about how like he took a picture of himself and he's like, okay, this is day one. He kind of looked a little bit more decrepit, and then all of a sudden by day 100, but he's glowing. I'm like, well, maybe there is something to
Yep.
this energy thing, man. Like,
Yep.
and it was crazy to me because I'm like, this guy was a young dude, like 24. So I'm like, maybe it really does sap your energy, and maybe there is something more to it. And
Yes.
I think it's huge. But another thing that you mentioned right I think at the beginning was how, or maybe it was on your Instagram page I saw where you said you use meditation. Can you go
Mhm.
into that a little bit too?
Yeah. So meditation, mindfulness, there are many aspects of that. Um, I'll just say I'll start. I'll go a couple places with this, and I'll make it brief. Um, the meditation and let's say meditation and mindfulness piece is a big piece of the puzzle because, as I mentioned earlier, it's like oftentimes when we're going to porn, we are attempting to meet certain needs, but oftentimes we're unconscious of those needs that we're attempting to meet. So a lot of times, again, we might be lonely, angry, tired, disconnected, sad, anxious, depressed, whatever it is, fill in the blank, right? And we go to porn for that. So through meditation and mindfulness, we just use a really simple meditation where we just train our guys just to sit 15 minutes a day and just observe the breath. Now, some guys say, I can't do that, and they just write it right off. Well, it's a practice, and you can do it. You just do it. It's like training a puppy to sit. We have to cultivate and train the mind. It depends how important it is to you,
Yeah.
So we sit and we follow the breath. And as we do that, we do notice that the mind is really active. We do know that the body is really active. We become aware of the thoughts that are arising in the mind. We become more conscious of the feelings and the sensations that are going on inside the body. And if we can learn, like that experience I shared with you at the beginning of our thing, if we can kind of learn to recognize there's two of us.
Yeah.
There's the part of us that's having the thought, that's having the emotion, that's having that impulse, but there's also this part of us that can see it. And that's what we're cultivating through mindfulness and meditation. We're learning to slow down and say, oh, I see that thought, and I see how that thought now triggers this impulse in my body. And I can also see that if I just sit with it, if I just watch it for a minute, it comes up and it goes away.
Yes.
So through meditation and mindfulness, we're learning to become more aware of the thoughts and the feelings that are arising, and also actions result from thoughts and feelings. It's like thought, feeling, action, thought, feeling, action. It's like a loop. So we can become more aware of it. And if we can become more aware of it, then we can stop reacting, but we can choose to respond in a different way, or we can choose to do nothing at all. We can learn to recognize that there's something coming up inside of me, and instead of running away from this emotion or checking out, I can just be with it and be present with what's going on inside of me, and I can learn to sit with it. And just like when I used to smoke cigarettes, and I quit cigarettes I stopped buying cigarettes. And I was like, oh, I still feel the urge, but I can't do anything about it. And I would notice that a minute later, I would just forget all about it, and I would just move on because I didn't have the choice. And it's the same thing. We can recognize that these thoughts and feelings arise, but we don't have to respond to them. We don't have to react to them. We can learn to be with them. Our emotions are there to teach us things, so we can learn to be with it. So that's kind of the mindfulness and meditation piece. And what mindfulness and meditation also does is it allows our nervous system to settle down a bit. It allows us to get more quiet, more still. Just Google the benefits of meditation. I mean, it affects us in positive ways all the places. It cultivates a more serene, healthy, quiet life. It's peace of mind, man. It does so many things for us. We can get to the root of what's really going on for us. And also for me, man, it's like we all have this inner voice inside of us, but that inner voice is drowned out by the loud, noisy, chaotic world, And if we will allow ourselves to get quiet and to get present after we sit for a little while, especially if we keep up with the practice, we can get to this place of quiet. We can begin to connect with, this is where the spiritual element really begins to come in. We can connect with that voice. We can connect with our higher knowing. We can connect with our higher self, man.
Yes.
And we can cultivate greater connection to that, and also greater peace in our lives, man. So that's the kind of the greater opportunity available to us there.
I love that. That was a great way to close it off, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
I totally agree with you, man. It's almost like that connection to the higher self, and the fact that you just roll it in perfectly with like, hey, man, now you find your purpose. You let go of that. Right. Oh, man, yeah. That's what it's all about for me. Because it's one thing, anybody can kind of let go, but it's almost now a lot of people are like, okay, where do I go now?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And you come in and really kind of put that in order. So tell us about where they can find you, where we can follow you, and more about your course as well that you offer, or program.
Thank you. Thank you so much, CJ. So right now, the easiest place to find us, if you're on Facebook, is we have a private men's only community. We're just about at 1,000 members. It's called Porn to Purpose. It's a private men's only group. I look at all the profiles that come and make sure it's a real person. I do my best to make it like a real safe community that guys can actually come in and start to connect and to share, man, and begin to get support and recognize you're not the only one out there. There's a lot of other people dealing with this. And that's often the first step of the journey, is just getting around other men going through this and just beginning to normalize the conversation a little bit. We do weekly live training inside of the community and everything. So that's a big piece of the puzzle. Connect with us at Porn to Purpose on Facebook group. If you're not comfortable on Facebook, or you're not on Facebook, I am on Instagram. You can look me up, Matt Sinkovitz. Matty2Sinks is my Instagram name. I'll probably change that at some point, but that's where you can find me now. Or you can email me at makingpeacewithporn@gmail.com. You can shoot me a direct message if you want to be a little more discreet. In terms of our programs, we offer a couple tiers of support. Again, we do some regular training inside of our community, but we can only go so far. There, I just actually started up like a basic entry level membership for guys who aren't maybe ready to go into like a full, like, you know, a full out like 3-month coaching program, but they just want to begin to commit to doing some work and getting some other men who are also committed to this path and this purpose, to this process. We have a entry level kind of membership program, and our premier program is called the Liberation Boot Camp, which is our 3-month, 90-day intensive program with brothers from around the world who are going and really doing this deep work. And we train them on the meditation, we train them on the skills and the tools and the tactics, and we get them into the habits. We train them on the why and the purpose piece. Yes. And our goal there is to get our guys to their first 90 days porn free, and then on to their first 1 year porn free, and give them the philosophy and the infrastructure to maintain that long term. So many support options wherever you are in your journey.
I love that, man. I love that.
Yeah.
On that note, guys, have a good one. Matt, it was an honor talking to you, brother.
CJ, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for putting this together and having me on today.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. Until the next episode.